The bull and the bear, wrestling over a strip of the Nevadan desert. The NCR, the closest thing to a functional democracy in the wasteland. The Legion, fanatics following a dying man who styles himself as a Roman emperor of the old world. It seems that if either is to survive, they'll have to crush the other to legitimize their ideal for this new world. Caesar crossed his Rubicon in the year 2277, when the not yet burned man Joshua Graham sent waves of legionnaires across the Hoover Dam for them to only break against Chief Hanlon and his rangers. 4 years have passed, and since then, both sides would have you believe they're biding their time, poking at the enemy, looking for the perfect place and time to strike. The NCR has the numbers, the tech, the industrial base, and yet they do nothing. Their best are standing by ranches, protecting two-headed cattle. The Legion is brutal and effective. They're all ready to die for Caesar, and what does he do? He sits in his tent and lectures on Hegelian philosophy. By all means, after nearly half a decade, one of these sides should have cracked the code on how to topple the other. By all means, they should have had enough time to find out their best strategy to get the best outcome. That is, one of them should have found their optimal strategy by now. Game theory, the study of strategic decision-making, can help us understand what they're optimizing for. And here's the thing. They've already found their optimal strategies. We've just been kind of wrong about what they're trying to achieve. That this forever war is a feature, not a bug. That the Mojave burns not despite their strategies, but because of them. And that the bull and the bear are not trying to win this war, but they are trying to preserve whatever is left of themselves. So let's talk about game theory. And don't worry, I promise this is still about nuclear cowboys. So one of the simplest games is Chicken. You've probably heard of it. 2 people, 2 cars, barreling towards each other. If neither swerves to avoid the collision, they'll both die. First one to swerve is the chicken. And if both swerve, then no one is chicken. But then the whole thing was just really anticlimactic. It sounds a little bit like the NCR and the Legion, doesn't it? A little bit? Okay, let's ramp up to a new example. Imagine that you and I are prisoners. The cops separate us, take us into separate rooms, and they pose a deal to each of us. Rat out your friend, and you go free. The cops just need one caller for this crime, but they'll happily have no problem locking both of us up. Rat on your partner, go free. Stay silent, maybe we both get light sentences, but if we both rat, we're both screwed. And this is what we call the prisoner's dilemma, and it's everywhere, from crime to, I don't know, nuclear war. You'd think after 5 years the NCR and the Legion would have figured out their optimal strategies. And again, here's the thing, I think that they have. They're just, again, not playing the game we think they're playing. Surely, if they're playing a game of prisoner's dilemma, then maybe there has to be some reality where both sides can cooperate, no matter how unlikely that may be, and that following that logic, this would be the best outcome for both of them. It would be pretty unlikely that the 2 prisoners would cooperate or that the NCR and the Legion would without knowing what's going on, but you get the point. Simplified down, our 2 options for our opposing factions are this. Fully commit to stalemate shattering attack, or don't commit. Protect what you have. The NCR is potentially the largest functioning government in North America in the Fallout world, from shady sands to the deserts of the Nevada. They have a substantial manpower pool to draw from across all of those incorporated states. What's more, the NCR has a relatively functioning society where people specialize in different kinds of work. Lawmakers, farmers, merchants, even freaking hospitality work, for Christ's sake. The reason I even bring this up is because that means that they have the ability to produce, to have an industrial base for the war effort. Brahmin farmers sending much needed meat to the troops at the Mojave, craftsmen making and maintaining arms for the military. So why are they stuck at the Colorado? Do you want to see the entire war in miniature? Visit the Mojave outpost. 2 giant statues shaking hands. The Ranger Unification Monument. Unity, partnership, strength. Below them, the NCR troops who haven't moved in years. Paperwork keeps caravans waiting for days. And Major Knight tells you they're holding the line while doing absolutely nothing. Ghost stands on that roof, watching nothing happen forever. It's not incompetence, it's the system working perfectly. Look busy, do nothing, maintain the status quo. And I'm not insinuating that they're in on it. But I am saying that higher command doesn't mind that all of this is being wasted. Not to mention all the technology the NCR has access to. Run-ins with the Brotherhood of Steel and even just their own stumbling across has given them power armor and energy weapons. An arsenal Caesar has no hope of getting his hands on for all his legionnaires. Just look at the Helios 1 station. That's a great example. The NCR wrestled that from the local Brotherhood chapter just around the time the courier comes to from his getting his bullet lobotomy. With the right people at the helm on the Helios 1 project and not that complete poser that you meet in the game, it would only be a matter of months or even weeks before the NCR's generals can call down a space laser on Caesar's dome. And yet, alas, Helios 1 sits broken. The armor, the power armor, guards cattle back home. Now, turn the coin and look at the Legion. They're not some ragtag group of tribesmen wearing a new coat of paint called Roman cosplay. Those that survive and thrive in Caesar's Legion and his military are complete and utter fanatics. Zealots, whose undying faith lies in one man, sitting at his throne, in a tent, just on the eastern side of the Colorado. Where the NCR has numbers, Caesar has devotion. Where the NCR has tech, Caesar has already infiltrated their ranks. Caesar's espionage is leagues better than anything the NCR is even doing, whether that's through a lack of underestimation or something else entirely. Take Vulpes and Kulta's network. Captain Curtis at McCarran. He's not just a spy, he's risen to become a pretty trusted officer in the NCR, at least here in the Mojave. The Legion has people everywhere. Ilario walks the strip openly. They could coordinate a simultaneous strike that would cripple NCR operations in hours. The intelligence is there. The positioning is perfect. But Caesar holds them back. Why? Well, maybe because revealed spies can't maintain the eternal threat. Better to let Curtis feed information forever than cash in on one decisive victory. Caesar's spies exist throughout the Mojave, and they know all too well how vulnerable the NCR supply lines are. Caesar's already taken key staging positions at the western bank of the Colorado, and he's already, again, infiltrated the NCR's military. So Caesar can end this, but he won't. Legionnaires are relentless, brutal, and effective, as I've said before. One only has to look at Nipton. If allowed to break into somewhere, the Legion will gut everything and even everyone just to send a message. No one wavers, few ever defect. So there should be no underestimation of the value that Caesar's cult of personality holds. As the numerically inferior force, Caesar's men are adept at guerrilla warfare, harassing caravans, and once again, the shock campaign that was Nipton. In and out, quickly. The only thing left behind is a message told only in crosses. The Legion is to the Mojave what the Mongols were to the steppes of Central Asia. And furthermore, revisiting a point, Caesar's no Luddite. His best tech is saved just for his high command. So what I'm getting at is this. If one of these forces can just muster for one last push, I think they'll topple the other. Every advantage, every opportunity, every path to victory, sitting there for 4 years, ignored. Want to see the optimization in real time? Let's do a tour. Camp Forlorn Hope. NCR's forward position. Soldiers eating irradiated food, no medical supplies, sending patrols to die daily. Across the river, the fort, Legion staging ground with full supplies, boats ready to deploy, could overrun Forlorn Hope in hours. The river between them might as well be a handshake agreement. Here's what's insane is that everyone knows what's happening. Talk to any NPC. Major Knight at the outpost. We're holding the line. What line? Ranger Ghost watches nothing happen for years. It's a dance and everyone knows the steps. Even random soldiers complain about guarding empty desert while the Legion masses across the river. So they all see it. They just can't really say it out loud, or deaf ears? This isn't incompetence, it's a choice. You might think there's an obvious solution here. Draw a line down the Colorado. NCR keeps the dam and the power. Caesar keeps the East and his empire. Shake hands, go home, stop bleeding the desert. And I know, that's a simplification, way easier said than done. But hell, the rational actors would arrive to something, right? When war costs more than peace, you try and make peace. But here's where our story takes a turn. What if I told you that peace, that seemingly rational, mutually beneficial peace, would be the worst possible outcome for both sides? What if sitting down at that negotiating table would be like signing their own death warrants? See, this isn't a normal war between nations fighting over resources or territory. This is something else entirely. And to understand why peace would destroy them both, we need to look at what these factions really are. Not their propaganda, not their stated ideals, what they actually are underneath the hood. Because the NCR isn't really a democracy anymore. And Caesar, he's not really trying to build Rome. Let me show you what I mean. We need to dive in and dissect these rotting corpses called the NCR and the Caesar's Legion. And we're going to start with the man, the myth, and the legend.
Maybe I should have you struck blind so my face is the last sight you ever behold.
Let's talk about the tumor in the room. Caesar's dying. Caesar is terminal. His days are numbered, and the end is near for him. Doctors are hard to come by, and arguably, few would be willing to help a man like Caesar. Hell, Arcade Gannon only does it because the courier sells him into slavery. Caesar has an autodoc, that much is true, but that won't be enough, because the Legion lacks the resources and the technological expertise. He knows he's dying. Caesar's anything but stupid. He has persistent headaches. His mind wanders off mid-conversation. His left leg is stiffening and failing him. And he's a 50-year-old man in an unkind world. And yet, he stalls. If the courier cozies up to Caesar, in private conversation, he drops the facade. He knows he's not the son of Mars, but he knows he needed to become that in order to bring people together. Bring them together under an ideology. To Caesar, the Legion in this persona he puts on is a means to an end. He truly believes that authoritarian fascism is what humanity needs if it's ever to have a chance of getting back on its feet. In his rhetorical employ, Caesar also justifies his claims through the use of Hegel's dialectics. Now, I am by no means an expert on philosophy, but quick crash course, Hegel was a German philosopher in the 19th century who posed that society evolves through a series of reactions and contradictions to the status quo, all towards a rational and free state. A system, the thesis, exists with all its established norms and traditions, until such a time where the people are constrained by these norms and traditions, and they have a reaction, be it a rebellion, a new political party. This becomes the antithesis. Eventually, these two, the thesis and the antithesis, will have to reconcile with one another, and from that will be born something not entirely new, but not wholly separate from one or the other. The synthesis. At face value, this is how Caesar justifies his authoritarian regime. He is the antithesis to the NCR. With all its corruption and lumbering slowness that comes from a democratic polity, he is no more than an instrument for necessary change, is probably the flowery way that he would put it. And Caesar is no fraud or self-confident philosophy major. I think he truly understands Hegel's work, at least in how it pertains to him and the Legion. See, a fraud would have taken it to its logical conclusion, bring upon the synthesis, attack the NCR, and usher in that new system for the Mojave and arguably the whole southwestern United States. But no, Caesar is not a fraud. Caesar understands Hegel so well that he knows he can't go any further. Anyone who's actually sat down with Caesar in private for that pass the BS conversation knows that Caesar is not some zealot. No, if Caesar was as righteous as he makes himself out to be in front of his men, he would have charged head on. In light of his days being numbered by his cancer, the logical choice would be commit and send everything they have at the NCR. I would argue that Caesar's first and foremost objective is actually to maintain what he and the Legion have. Remember, the outcome of Hegel's dialectics is that the thesis and the antithesis, the NCR and the Legion, form something new, the synthesis. Caesar understands this all too well. If he sends his army across the dam, the Legion will cease to exist. These two Goliaths will destroy each other, and in the aftermath, neither Caesar nor the NCR will be the same. And by maintaining perpetual thesis versus antithesis, Caesar's frozen the dialectic process itself, and he's weaponized it against itself. Here's another reason Caesar won't attack. He's got a legate problem. Why doesn't Caesar just send Lanius now? I'd argue because Caesar knows Roman history, and successful generals become threats. A legate who conquers the NCR doesn't need Caesar anymore. Lanius crossing the Colorado means Lanius the Conqueror, not Caesar the Conqueror. Better to keep your general waiting for a battle that never comes. Better to die Caesar, the eternal leader, than to see Lanius the usurper take power. It's not military strategy, it's political survival at that point. Caesar has to orchestrate his empire's eternal suspension, if it has any chance of surviving after he dies. At best, destroying the NCR leads Caesar having to core and assimilate a relatively developed democratic society. This means concessions, compromises. At worst, destroying the NCR takes everything out of the Legion. With no strong leadership left in its wake, factionalism will tear down everything Caesar built once he's gone. His warlords, unable to agree on what to do with the new territory, or the old for that matter, will just, a la Alexander and his generals, splinter everything. So prolong his empire is the name of the game. The hero of the Mojave, apocryphal Kimball, is at the heart of the rot that has left the NCR as an oligarchic bastardization of itself, teetering like a house of cards. President Aaron Kimball rose to prominence off the coattails of his career as a decorated general in the NCR's army. His many campaigns into the Sierra Nevada and his annihilation of tribes across the eastern frontier poised him as the no-nonsense war hawk. 3 years after his campaigns in the Mojave, he placed down his fatigues for a suit and tie, successfully becoming a representative for the hub. And not even a few months later, he catapulted to the highest office in the land, President of the NCR. Amongst his first acts as president, Kimball ordered the annexation of the Hoover Dam, sending the NCR firmly into the theater that gained him so much renown. A popular act, it has to be said. The subsequent New Vegas Treaty meant that the citizens of the NCR would get fresh water and 95% of the power generated by the dam. The other 5% being sent to power Mr. House's New Vegas. Kimball then saw fit to use this popularity and political capital to strip away President Tandy's anti-monopoly laws. Laws that specifically limited the amount of acreage and cattle that a single person could own. In only a matter of years, there was no illusion as to who Kimball's presidency was benefiting. Is it the common NCR citizen back home? Maybe. They do have more power and clean drinking water now. All they had to trade away was their sons and daughters. Is it the Army's top brass? Sure, they get to flex their military muscles on the battlefield, but in a bit we'll ask Chief Hanlon how much this war is benefiting him. Is it the people of the Mojave finally under some kind of guiding authority? Well, if you ask anyone from Good Springs to Prim to Novak, the NCR are seen as just outsiders who don't know anything about life out in the Mojave. Invaders who put walls and guns around you and then tell you that you're liberated. You're safe now. Is it the soldiers, the conscripts being shipped off to the desert? The same soldiers dying to countless ridiculous horrors for the past 4 years, all in the name of a stagnant border? Or is it people like Heck Gunderson, the Brahmin barons? People like Mr. Gunderson who have gotten fat in the wake of Kimball's presidency, whose lands and livestock have ballooned at the cost of the small Brahmin farmer who can no longer bring his goods to market because Heck and his cronies have driven the price of beef so low that it ruins any small mom-and-pop farm, a la Rockefeller. What do people like Heck do with all this newfound wealth? Well, they bribe senators and congressmen. They exercise their power, their minority rule, to ensure that they never have to go back to the way things were before Tandy. If you follow the caps, you follow the truth. The Crimson Caravan and Van Graffs make record profits during wartime. Their caravans get attacked just enough to raise prices, but usually not enough to stop trade. McLafferty will tell you herself that war is good for business. Peace, that means competition, lower prices, actual free market, and we can't have that. So the entire economy of New Vegas runs on this war. Every cap spent, every contract signed, every unfortunate raid, it's all optimization for profit, not victory. Years later, and the NCR and the Mojave are war fatigued. Kimball's popularity has fallen as the public becomes jaded with his forever war. What Kimball so desperately needs is to bring an end to the war, a victory if he can manage it. He can't acquiesce to Caesar and give him the dam and the whole of the Mojave. That would ruin his legacy and destroy his government. So logically speaking, the only option is to send everything he has at the dam, cross the Colorado, and excise the tumor that is Caesar. Except he won't. Kimball knows what he's doing. The Brahmin barons know too. But people like Chief Hanlon are tragically completely misdiagnosing the problem. Hanlon, the hero behind the first battle of the Hoover Dam, decorated ranger, so respected that he has the ear of President Kimball. Why would he, of all people, be trying to sabotage the NCR's efforts in the theater? Because Hanlon knows that the Mojave is a losing cause. That the Mojave is a money pit where the currency is the young men and women you can find battered or dead in places like Camp Searchlight. Why does he falsify intelligence reports? Hanlon tells us it's because Kimball's war can't be won. We agree on that. That maybe, just maybe, if he can make the campaign seem even more hopeless than it already is, that the president can pack it all up and send them all home. Hanlon, Guy, Kimball has no intention of losing or winning this war for that matter. Hanlon has been made part of and given front row seats to this obfuscation by Kimball. The best of the Rangers being sent to chase ghosts in Baja California. Power armor, heavy infantry, protecting Brahmin barons from small-time raiders back in the heartland. New recruits with barely working service rifles or armor being sent to the front lines. Want to see this optimization in action? Go to Camp Gulf. The Misfits, that's literally what they call themselves. They probably couldn't even do jumping jacks in sync. All of these soldiers are completely at a loss without the courier coming in and training them or doing something to get them into fighting order. It's a microcosm for all the other green troops out there being sent to the front lines. Something about that quest that says a lot about just how serious the NCR is that you can solve the quest by just lying about their readiness. So that tells you everything that you need to know. The system is designed for the appearance of effort, not actual success. Brahmin barons only have one vote at the ballot box, but they have a lot of money to throw around. So in there is kind of the tragedy of Hanlon. He's almost there. He can see all the symptoms, but he can't diagnose the issue. If the problem was actual incompetence, then his false intelligence might actually get the NCR to realize something, realize that they'll never beat the Legion. But they don't care about that. The Legion is fodder. They're just the perfect cover. The NCR has perfectly optimized for this war. It's just that victory isn't the goal. We know what the NCR looks like when they want to win. The war with the Brotherhood. They threw everything at those bunkers. Overwhelming force, massive casualties, but they won. Took Helios 1, scattered the Brotherhood. So they can do total war. They just won't. Not against the Legion. So no, Kimball will not bring an end to this war. The Legion is the perfect distraction. A boogeyman to point to while him and his cronies rob the NCR blind. Caesar corrupts philosophy to preserve his ideology. The NCR corrupts democracy to preserve oligarchy. Both need eternal war because peace would expose what they truly are, what they truly have become. A sham government that only benefits the rich, and a cult of personality with no end game. Bitter Springs is the perfect microcosm of this optimization. The NCR holds it barely. understaffed, under-equipped, constantly harassed by con raiders. They could withdraw. It has no strategic value, or they could reinforce it. You know, both sides have turned Bitter Springs into a permanent wound, because wounds justify the war machine. Now we're seeing what the game truly is for. It's if collapse of the government is the biggest threat and outcome to both sides, then the game theory would tell us that they'll arrive at the strategy that'll get them as close as possible to the opposite of that. And in this case, that means survival through that forever war. Existentially, there's nothing to gain from securing the Mojave, so let it burn. Let the meat grinder turn. Let's take a step back. A big step back. Well, because what we've discovered here is genuinely messed up. Two factions, perfectly rational, making optimal choices. And these choices require the Mojave to burn forever. Now we're looking at what optimal play actually means. The NCR sets up a couple bases, couple outposts along the highways, and calls it Liberation. Stocks them with newbies carrying Grandpa's hand-me-down rifle that's barely good enough at gecko blinking. Gives them enough dollars to drink and gamble away their sorrows on the strip. Meanwhile, the power armor, the real military might, sits back home protecting the Brahmin barons, who got fat off Kimball's reforms. Again, this isn't incompetence. It's the NCR optimizing for oligarchy, not victory. Caesar. He turned himself into the perfect boogeyman. Plunder, loot, raid, burn, enslave. Then sit in his tent and lecture about Hegelian dialectics while his brain tumor counts down the days. He could send Lanius across the dam tomorrow, but synthesis would destroy the Legion, so he freezes history itself and weaponizes philosophy against philosophy. That's not giving up. That's game theory mastery. Think about what we're really saying here. Every time a traitor gets gutted outside Novak, that's optimal play. Every time an NCR private dies holding a position that doesn't matter, that's working as intended. Camp Searchlight, Nipton. Not military failures. They're the cost of keeping the game running. The suffering isn't collateral damage. It's the price of equilibrium. At no point during these last 4 years did either side lose control of their war machines, letting it sputter out. They've perfected them. Caesar corrupted philosophy in order to preserve his ideology and his status forever, or at least as long as he's around. The NCR corrupted democracy to preserve oligarchy. Different corruptions, same optimal strategy. Eternal war. Even Mr. House understood this. Remember what he said about Caesar. I don't want you to touch one hair on that man's head. Why? Because Caesar provides a good distraction for the NCR. Even the immortal autocrat running New Vegas needs this war to continue. Everyone who matters benefits from the stalemate. Everyone who doesn't, well, they burn. We expect evil to be irrational, crazy dictators making even crazier choices. But what if the most horrifying outcome comes from perfect rationality? What if game theory itself becomes the villain when the game is broken? The Mojave burns because that's what perfect play looks like when cooperation means death. Every dead caravan, every pointless skirmish, it's not tragedy, it's optimization. They're not trapped in a bad equilibrium, they're thriving in the only stable one. And the kicker is, when you pick up that controller, you're not choosing who wins. You're just choosing whether the game continues. You're the variable that breaks their perfect equation of suffering. I started researching for this video to analyze faction strategies and accidentally discovered how rational actors create irrational suffering. If you see any real-world parallels, well, that's entirely coincidental. This is definitely just about nuclear cowboys fighting Roman cosplayers. Obviously. But here's the thing about game theory. I might be completely wrong. Maybe Caesar does have an endgame I missed? Maybe the NCR's corruption serves a different optimization. Hell, maybe Mr. House has the whole thing figured out and we're all just missing it. If you've got a different read on this, go ahead and tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll be back again soon with something interesting.